What's up guys, welcome to the Momentum Trading Lab. This is part 2 of the ICT 1 setup for live video. If you haven't seen part 1, go check that out and then come back to this one. In that one we focused on how to identify the session based liquidity pools, and in this one I'm going to show you some different entry techniques once we've traded into those liquidity pools. And without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so the very first thing that we want to make sure of is that we are trading in a kill zone. So time of day is just as important as anything else. So there are 3 kill zones that I trade in. It is the London kill zone from 2 to 5 a.m., the New York morning session from 8:30 to 11 a.m., and the New York afternoon session from 1:30 till 4 p.m. And this is all in New York Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so that will be the very first item on our checklist. So we are going to work through the checklist and then we are going to look at some examples. So like I said, the first thing is we want to be looking for our setup in the kill zone. The next thing is we want to see price trade into a session-based liquidity pools. So this will be the liquidity pools that we identified in part 1 of this video series. The next thing, once we have traded into this liquidity pool, then we are going to look for displacement and a market structure shift on the 2-minute, the 3-minute, the 4-minute, or the 5-minute time frames. So you will have to scan through them and see where the displacement and the market structure shift is obvious. And I will show you how to do this in the examples after the presentation. So the next part is very important. We want to see displacement. So once we have traded into the session-based liquidity pool and absorb the liquidity below this level, then we want to see an energetic move in the opposite direction. That is called displacement, and typically the displacement will print a fair value gap. So that will be your clue, and this is known as the smart money footprint. So I see this kind of as one thing. The displacement must create the market structure shift. So as we are moving down into the liquidity pool, you are going to keep an eye on the very last higher low that formed, and this displacement leg, we want to see that break the market structure into a bullish market structure. Then the next one is the entry model. So you want to identify the displacement leg. So if we look at this high that price had to take out to give us the market structure shift, we are going to look at that high and the low that traded into the liquidity pool, and that is known as the displacement leg. So we want to look for a PD array in the displacement leg. So there are obviously quite a couple of them. I'm going to focus on 3 of them for this video. So in that displacement leg, we can look for a fair value gap. It can be a breaker block, an order block, an inversion, fair value gap, anything that is in that displacement leg that is obvious for that setup. We can target that for our entry. All right, so far the setup, it was in the kill zone. We traded into the session-based liquidity pool. We got the displacement into a market structure shift. Now for the setup, we targeted this bullish order block. So the entry will be right at the top of the order block as price trades into it. And for our stop loss, so the stop loss will be at the very last low. So the low that traded into the liquidity pool just before the displacement and the market structure shift. Your stop loss will be right below that low. And then for our take profit, your take profit will be an opposing session-based liquidity pool that we discussed in part 1, or an opposing PD array such as a bearish order block or bearish fair value gap. All right, so let's quickly recap the trading checklist. So we want to be looking for the setup in the kill zones. Price must then trade into a session-based liquidity pool. So we want to see a raid on liquidity. Into displacement. The displacement is a strong energetic move that typically creates a fair value gap. We want to see it shift market structure. Then we will take an entry in a PD array inside of the displacement leg. And then our stop loss will be at the previous low, and the target will be an opposing session-based liquidity pool or PD array. All right, so let's have a look at a couple of examples. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of examples. So I'm going to start on the daily chart. So you should always have the narrative for the higher term time frame. So if we just look at the price action right here, price traded down. It took out these relative equal lows. So it had a raid on sell side liquidity on the daily chart. And then it also traded into this fair value gap, traded in, and then it started to move away to the upside. So we could now likely assume that it's going to go towards the buy side liquidity. And we have a swing high right there and one right there. So this is the closest one for now. So we'll target this one. Okay, so we have our higher time frame narrative. We are coming from sell side liquidity and a bullish fair value gap. And it looks like price wants to expand to the upside to pair the sell side liquidity with the buy side liquidity resting above this swing high. All right, so let's drop down to a lower term time frame. Okay, so we've gone forward in time a little bit. So we are now going into the New York afternoon session. So let's just observe the price action preceding this New York afternoon kill zone. So if we mark off the New York open till the end, which is at 12, we'll say it was just consolidating. So let's mark off the lowest low and the highest high that printed in the morning kill zone. Okay, so we have the lowest low and the highest high. Okay, so let's go to the London kill zone and see if there's any resting liquidity. So that is from 2 o'clock until 5. Okay, so we have the lowest low during the London kill zone still untouched. So we want to see that on the chart. And then for the Asian session, which is from 8 till midnight. Okay, so the highest high has already been cleared out, but the lowest low is still untouched. Okay, and then if we have a look right there, we also have a high, and this one was printed during the morning kill zone. So that is also a New York AM high. Okay, so let's see. The ideal target would be the buy side liquidity right there. So now I'm going to go down to the 5-minute time frame. Okay, so let's see if price trades into this liquidity right here and displace to the upside, then we are going to look for a long position targeting that high. If price rides the New York morning session high and displaces to the downside, then we will look for a short position potentially targeting this liquidity and the PD array at the bottom. Right, so let's see what happens. Okay, like I mentioned, this is the New York afternoon kill zone. So we want to mark off that time zone as well. So that is from 1:30 until 4. Okay, so right here, price tapped into the New York morning session low. So now we want to see strong displacement to the upside, ideally taking out this high for a market structure shift. Okay, and here we get a huge energetic move to the upside, already taking out that liquidity. So if it retraces down right now, then we will target that high right there for the TP target. Okay, so let's identify the displacement leg. So like we said, the displacement leg is the area between the last high, so the high that had to be taken out for the market structure shift, and the low that traded into the liquidity. So it will be the area between that high and this low. Okay, so we have our displacement area marked out. So now we can look for potential PD arrays. So the first one that grabs my eye is the breaker block. So it's the up close candles or the series of up close candles before the move down that does the raid on liquidity. So your breaker block will be these two green candles. Okay, so if price now trades back into this bullish breaker, we can enter right there with our stop loss below this low. And our target will be the buy side liquidity that we identified on the daily chart. So let's see if this comes back into the displacement area. All right, so right there, it taps into the bullish breaker, starts to move away. Let's see if it can get our TP. And then right there, it rates the buy side liquidity for a total of 216 points on the NASDAQ. Okay, for the next example, we are going to look at the London session. The kill zone starts at 2 a.m. So just before 2 a.m., we can come to the chart, mark off our different levels. So let's first have a look at the Asia session. So the Asia session kill zone is from 8 until midnight. Right, so the lowest low that printed in the Asia session as well as the highest high. We already took out the Asia high. That is fine. All right, and then if we just go to the left a little bit more, we have to mark off the New York afternoon session from 4 until 1:30, and we have the high still untouched, so that is our potential raid on buy side liquidity. Right, and then let's have a look at the New York morning session. So we want to have a look at the highest high and the lowest low from 9:30 until 12. Right, so we already took out the highest high, so we are gonna ignore that. But the low has not been taken out, as well as the afternoon session low I also did not mark out, so that is right there. Right, and we can also mark off the lunchtime low as well. That will also be a level of liquidity. Okay, so we have our different session based liquidity pools marked off. So let's have a look at some of the PD arrays on the 15-minute chart. We have this fair value gap right here. We also have this order block in the vicinity of the New York lunchtime low. And then we also have that breaker block, which is the green candle or series of green candles before the raid on the sell side liquidity, which would have been right there. Okay, so, and we also want to mark off the time zone. In this case, it is the London kill zone, which is from 2 until 5 a.m. New York time. Okay, so let's drop down one time frame to the 5-minute. Okay, so if we have a look here, so we've raided the buy side liquidity above the Asia high. So we could potentially from here see displacement down. And then the very last higher low was this one right here. So if we displace below this low, that will be your bearish market structure shift. So let's see how this plays out. See, in this case, we got to move down. But you'll see there was no displacement. There was no real fair value gap that printed there. So that tells me that was just a raid on short-term sell-side liquidity, so price can move higher. Okay, so we are still moving up, so we need to track the lower or the higher lows. So it'll be that one right there. So if we displace below that low, that will be your bearish market structure shift. All right, so right there, you can see that was a pretty energetic move. We have a fair value gap right there. So we have the raid on buy side liquidity, which was the New York afternoon session high. And this is a pretty good setup because then we have another short-term raid on buy side liquidity right there. Then we got the displacement. It took out our low. We have the fair value gap. So we can enter that. We can target that for a potential entry with your stop right above that high, the very last higher high that we made inside of the liquidity pool. You can target the Asia low, take a partial right there, and then let's target the New York PM session low from the previous day. All right, so let's see if we get that entry. Okay, so right there, it would have tripped you in, started to dump into the Asia low. So you take a partial there. Just tracking all the PD arrays as they form. Comes back close to your entry. That's why I don't fiddle with my stop loss too early. And then right there, dumps into the PM session low. So if you wanted, you could have had a runner for these potential levels right here. So just to recap with our checklist, the first item is the raid on liquidity, which we got when we traded above the PM session high. Then we want to see a bearish market structure shift with displacement. We got the displacement right there. Our displacement leg is the area between the low and the high. We had the fair value gap right there. Tripped us into our position, targeting the Asia low and the PM session low from the previous day. It dumped into the Asia low, came back close to the entry, and then moved down into the PM session low, and actually eventually raided the New York morning session from the previous day. All right, that's been the examples. Don't forget to check out our Discord. I do daily analysis in here, and then we have the general chat and the trading floor for the community. We have the futures, crypto, and the forex sections. And then also you get access to the Momentum Trading Lab trading school with all the different educational content. and then the link will definitely be in the description below. All right, this video is coming to an end. This has been part 2 of the ICT1 setup for live. If this video gave you any value, please remember to hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.